All right, everyone. So we've heard about an incredible journey of a company that's really incorporating innovation into their culture. And now we're moving along to our Smart Cities panel. And I would like to introduce you to your host of this upcoming panel, Linda Villarreal Payal. So Linda, she's a serial entrepreneur, vice president of the American Chamber of Commerce. She's a big supporter of startup and corporate synergies, and she has been part of the Plug and Play family since 2018. Linda, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
And we will have, as is a panel discussion.
Thank you. I get to sit this time.
You get to sit this time, yeah. Great to have you with us. We have an exciting panel.
I am thrilled. You know, I heard about some of our panelists. In fact, I've got a couple of them who I know, and I'm really excited about seeing them again, even if it's virtually. Amazing team that. A corporate and investment company that I met when I was in Silicon Valley last year, and I am so delighted that they're part of the panel, especially because they're going to shed some light. But don't you think it's really interesting how smart cities have evolved since this pandemic situation, how it's really, everybody was talking about sustainability and processes, but have you noticed how it's going into fast forward?
That's right. Yeah, there was such a rapid development in smart cities. Everybody was talking, as you said, about sustainability, about Internet of Things, and now we actually had, unfortunately, we had the time to also implement those new technologies.
Absolutely, especially now with door-to-door logistics. We've had to do smart energy solutions, contactless environments that have to be considered now. I even think it's interesting how it's going to affect the future of how people will be doing video conferencing and meetings as it was before.
Right, and I think that a lot of our partners here at Plug and Play, they actually really seize the moment, and they now double down on innovation and double down on smart city innovation, and that's super exciting to see. Let's see if our panelists have all arrived
great.
And have dialed in. So yes. Panelists, our guests, is everyone already dialed in? And can we start with our panel?
Great. Well, I am so excited. Thank you so much, Nick, for the great introduction, and also just to allow me to be a part of this wonderful discussion. I'm really excited to welcome Peter Mikovich, Managing Partner and Chairman of the Board of Inven Capital. I had the great pleasure of meeting you in Silicon Valley, and I'm happy that you're here with us today. Welcome, Peter. I hope they'll be able to see each other soon, but this is great, and you're going to have a wonderful, you're always wonderful in talking about the visions and how taking a challenge into a wonderful opportunity, and it seems like you're skyrocketing on some of your investments. I'm going to jump to you in just a second. I just want to introduce the rest of our panel. I'd also like to introduce Christian Kallenbach, Head of Sales by Cloud and Heat, which is an amazing technology, and we're going to love to hear more about it. Christian, thank you so much for joining us. I love your background.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm excited to be on this panel today. That's great.
Well, you have all kinds of great stuff to share with us. I know that. I know your company, and it's amazing. Dominic Weiss, Head of Urban Innovation, Vienna, Austria. I think it's going to be super exciting to get your insights, Dominic, especially when you think about globalization versus investment in regional infrastructure and how you see things as going forward. I'm totally looking forward to coming back to you and asking some questions, and I hope that this panel will be able to jump in and out. And of course, Sean Depana, Head of Corporate Innovation and Investment, APAC at Plug and Play. Welcome, panelists. I'm delighted that you're here. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in, if I may, back to Peter. Peter, can you shed some insight? How has the pandemic affected your, or more general, venture capital approach to new investment opportunities? And what were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you kind of refocus and revamp and move forward?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Look, I think it has been a very challenging year, and of course, everybody online, and without personal contacts, actually, which is actually in our business very, very important. So basically what we needed to do to go online and accept it as a new reality and strike deals, continue supporting our portfolio companies, continue looking for new opportunities out there. And for your reference, this year was actually a great year in terms of number of transactions we did. We did 3 new deals and 3 big follow-ons. So 6 transactions and still looking at 2 additional ones. So we haven't stopped. We actually even worked even harder and led great deals like $50 million deal with Forto, which is a Berlin-based digital freight forwarder. We did great investment in Sweden, Elit, and one Czech great startup called Topito. And then we supported our existing portfolio companies, because some of them turn out to be actually anti-cyclical. They actually are gaining more momentum in COVID times, etc. For instance, Zoller, which is a platform which is helping people to pick the right system, like PV panel and storage for their homes and other stuff. This became actually booming business as people sit at home because of COVID, looking around and trying to reallocate their money from stock markets, which are very volatile, right, into something really more meaningful, which is their home, real estate. So all these stuff has been happening to us. So pretty good year, tough because of COVID and the fact that we need to do things online, but we haven't stopped at all.
I pretty much doubt that anybody can stop you, Peter, especially with your positive energy and your team that's working together with you and identifying all these amazing technologies and investment opportunities. As I know you, I am excited to sit here and have this conversation, even if it's not in person. But I'm going to jump over to Dominic Weiss, because you're talking about investment in technologies. What's interesting about Dominic Weiss is being the head of urban innovation for Vienna, Austria. He kind of has a different take on other things. So, Dominic, as you heard from an investor point of view, how do you think about urban spaces becoming the hot spots of innovation? And where do you see chances? And which challenges do we face when it comes to urban innovation?
Well, hello, everybody. Good to be here. Thanks for this question. And I'm happy for Petro that actually he had a pretty good year. Just a couple of information. Urban Innovation Vienna, we are a company owned by the city. So I do speak in the name of the city of Vienna. And for us, it's probably not the best year. But concerning your question, well, I'm happy actually that we all agree that cities are the hotspot of innovation. The question is just actually where innovation actually leads to, and in my case, as a city guy, I do the best way innovation leads to prosperity and wealth. The question is, prosperity and wealth actually, is it there for just a couple of people, or is it there for all the people? And as a city, I'm responsible for 2 million people in my city, so I have to take care that innovation actually is there for everyone. And the problem with innovation and urban infrastructure is that innovation goes very fast. You know, it just there is kind of from Fraunhofer, there is a study, they had a look how long an urban innovation actually lasts, that another innovation actually overcomes the old innovation. And 200 years ago, this innovation leads for years and years, but at the time where digitalization is so fast, actually innovation goes so fast that city administration and city halls actually just can't go along with this pace. And that's the problem, because as a city of Vienna, for example, we do own our entire infrastructure. Yeah, we say from the cradle to the grave in Vienna, we do own everything. So we're responsible. We are sitting on the driving seat, and it's up to us to bring this infrastructure with the help of innovation to a next level. But it's pretty hard for a city to interact with private companies, with investors like you guys, and with startup communities, because we do speak different languages, we do have a different pace, and that's the problem. And I think that the chance is actually that we kind of find a win-win situation where urban infrastructure owners, like big cities like Vienna, where investors like you, and where startups actually can find a win-win situation. But it's not that easy, because as a city, I'm not an investor, and my business case is probably not money. My business case is like social welfare and social health, you know, and that's the reason why I do see this entire discussion, of course, from a different angle. But I think I'm happy to be on this panel today and share my views anyway with Plug and Play and others, because at the end of the day, we belong to each other, and the future is actually an interaction between all of us.
That is so true, and I totally agree with you on that. And I think it was important that you're part of this panel, because we're hoping that you can shed light for us, and that our partners can shed light to you. I'm going to jump over to Sean Depana, Head of Corporate Innovation and Investment, APAC. And I think one of the things you as listening to our two entry questions, I'm going to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you see for corporations and governments in adopting digital transformation across their business units? And in the case of what we just heard with Dominic is, you know, how do you get this, the municipalities engaged that, you know, it's not just social, but we're here to work together and to do something. Please give us your insights.
Well, thank you again for inviting me. Actually, it's good morning to you guys and good evening here in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm here. It's been here for about 8 months. So it's really amazing to see this such a caliber of variety of panelists over here today, because I think I couldn't agree more with Dominic here. That resonates so well with the urbanizations and all of these smart city initiatives that are taking places. All of these industries are almost merging to some kind of a level of commonality in terms of innovations and in terms of digitalization that have to kind of take place very quickly. The challenge has been always for most of the companies is that they've done so well with basically scaling and corporations to create revenue and generate and expand within their own P&L and domain expertise. But what they never have been prepared for is to see this transformation occurring on a parallel industries that is really hitting them on a blind spot. Since the beginning of a pandemic, if the innovation was in the mind of a lot of corporations, now it's a forced innovations, means that you have no choice but to actually must innovate and transform your business units to think about innovation, thinking of designing your new products and services. So I would say that basically so many industries now that are facing healthcare industries, the real estate industries and the supply chain industries, they're realizing that the consumer behavior has completely transformed. Mobility just stopped for 8 months, 9 months. What do we need to do to sell products, to stay in business? So these kind of ideas has to come across, parallel industry and collaborations to learn what is happening actually in some industries that's going to impact my business. So this is what is transparent right now in most of the cities and countries that are seeing most corporations have to optimize their business through either learning to new kind of innovations that is occurring from parallel industry, as well as seeing what needs to be done within their own organization quickly to be able to basically compete in this very competitive landscape that's occurring across these multiple countries and industries too.
I'm going to jump over to Christian Kallenbach, who's the head of sales for Cloud and Heat, because he's pretty much can share some insights. It's a fantastic company, and he can be interesting to see how did the pandemic impact the digitalization strategy and implementation in companies in our life. Like how did you see that? Because you have infrastructure, digitalization, and all kinds of things. And what Dominic just said, I think you're kind of doing a win-win for everything across the board. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a true statement, and I really want to pick up on something Sean just said, that a lot of companies were actually forced to digitalization in their processes, and even even more conservative companies. And, living in Germany, there's a lot of conservative medium-sized companies out there, and they were pushed so heavily into investing and changing their strategies. And, basically, that there are some statistics out there that within a few months after the pandemic started, the innovations and the timing of the innovations, there was something done in like 3 months, which usually would have taken 2 years in the IT industry. And that's a pretty good example of how this was pushed. And, from one day to the other, almost, people went to the home office and, did every company have the right IT infrastructure? Probably not. But the good thing is the base of the infrastructure was there. So there were these crazy statistics. In Frankfurt, there is one of the largest internet nodes in the world called D6. And right in the first 6 weeks of the pandemic, almost every day, they announced crazy numbers of traffic they had over their internet node. But it was stable and it was prepared for it. But on the other hand, there's a lot of investment going on now in IT infrastructure to build the base for a more remote life. And, like it or not, and I'm really with Peter, who said at the beginning, we're all missing to meet in person and, shake somebody's hands, and have a coffee with somebody. But we need to be prepared for these situations. And that's why a lot of companies invest, but also, and this is what Dominic said, cities look into new opportunities, how they build buildings for the future. We believe as a company, as Cloud and Heat, there will be a lot more decentralized IT and digitalization infrastructure as well. We're all reading about these hyperscale data centers of all the large players, but to do something in a city and to do it 5G ready with very short latency times and everything. So we see for all these new applications, spots in the field and in cities, and there's a lot of innovation going on. And basically that's the view from both the company and also my personal view, that this was a huge push for the digital life, what happened over the last 8 months.
I think it's incredible when you put everything all in perspective. And I'm going to jump back over to Dominic. Dominic, you're in a platform right now from different areas of industry. Let's say you got investors, you've got corporates that are working in digitalization. When you look at the globalization versus investment in regional infrastructure, what did the pandemic, do you think, taught the cities or the city of Vienna and the urban areas regarding this essential question? You kind of touched on it, but how could you imagine a better collaborative effort to have a win-win to get things moving forward? I love that smile. It was a challenging question. I'm sorry, but you've got investors right now who are ready to jump in. We want them to invest in infrastructure, and
no, sorry, that's for sure. No, thanks for this question. I mean, the thing is, I think I'm totally aware that we have to think global, kind of, and act local. But the thing is, I think a city like Vienna, who owns its infrastructure on a very high level, is very eager to kind of share this infrastructure. So what I strongly believe is that the big companies and the small companies, what they need a test bed. It's not, they do not, you guys, you do not make money in the city of Vienna. But I think if we offering you our infrastructure with all those 120,000 civil servants with a very high education, very high quality, if you can try out your technique and your pilots and all your stuff on our real infrastructure, then it's a win-win situation. Because with these pilots, with these kind of outputs, you make your money somewhere in Brazil and in India, but you need this very high level test beds. And I personally think the city of Vienna can very easily offer you this kind of infrastructure. The problem is much more a legal one. I'm telling this story so many people, the first public-private partnerships we did with the big IT companies, it was sitting me on a table and probably a colleague of mine, and on the other side, there were sitting 20 lawyers from Siemens and from Cisco. So it's an unfair match, So cities like Vienna or all other cities who wanna make public-private partnerships with the industry, they have to kind of strengthen their legal power. And if you manage this, actually, I think then we can make business out of it. That's the point,
I think, Peter, you better jump in and tell them how easy it is to do business with your organization.
Yeah, actually,
And that it's not so complicated and you do not come with a bunch of lawyers. In fact, you come with a bunch of solutions. Peter, how has the pandemic affected your portfolio company's current investments, and how do you see, what Dominic talked about, having the big companies coming in with their corporate team, their corporate legal team, and you're coming in as the chairman of the board saying, wait a minute, I've got this and this to offer. How do you see that, and how do you see that that's changed in the last 2020 going into 21?
I will try to answer the first part of the question because the second one I didn't hear. So
Okay.
please give it to me. But all in all, impact of COVID on portfolio. Look, it was actually very interesting. We got like two wins there. On the one hand, we have seen and we have tested robustness of our portfolio companies with such a big impact. The whole world economy turned off over a weekend, and it took some time in spring this year. We saw how strong the business models are. We saw how well are the customers connected to our portfolio companies and the suppliers, etc. How strong are those founders who immediately go in Kurzarbeit, these half-time jobs, etc. How immediately they started to act to capture cash, to see and wait what's going to happen next. So it was a great test of personalities of the founders and the whole business models, and we have gotten very good results here. So and it actually strengthened those guys because they have been able to survive. Secondly, we have seen across the board in the boardrooms who is able to help when help needs to be provided and who does not help. And it's actually very good to know as well with whom you co-invest next time, etc. So pretty, transformative situation, which is actually very healthy to know who is who can count on. And last but not least, actually, sometimes, it's difficult to make changes in portfolio companies, right? Sometimes the management needs a little help to make radical changes to their business models. And by the way, COVID basically was very, very clear about it. So some transformational changes which were not able to be done before COVID were possible actually because of COVID. So we got longer runways, we got more lean structures in place, only the strongest stayed, and we know who is who. So actually very interesting process for the next phase. And by the way, it seems that clean tech is actually experiencing momentum now. I'm getting lots of calls from lots of family offices from around the world who want to allocate money into clean tech because it makes meaning. And here I would like to say to Dominic that they actually may be much closer to each other when it comes to investors and the cities and institutions here, because we actually, even though at the end of the day it's about money, it's the impact founders wants to make is important here. So we actually bet on impact. When we have a meaning, we can have a big impact, which means there will be profits following the meaning and the impact. So I think we are much closer to each other than it seems for the first time. And I love the idea of cities helping startups to pilot their great products and services as a great showcase how it can work and take it from there. So I think we are much closer.
Thank you for that. I'd like to totally go into that direction a little bit more, touching not only on what you said, Peter, but also what Dominic and Christian said. I'd like to come back to Sean. Sean, in sustainability and circular economy is going to impact all industries. What are some of the shifts in consumer behaviors towards sustainable products and services, and how will that affect smart cities and urban planning and urban infrastructure?
Well, absolutely. Actually, now we notice that basically every corporation's initiative, whatever they are actually industry they're in, whether they are in the food industry, whether they're in petrochemical and energy industries, the core of their initiative is all about sustainability and reduction in carbon footprint. So this means that we have already kind of fast tracked ourselves into this zero plastic waste initiative with some of the largest plastic manufacturing, production, and energy companies. And we are basically want to really be the force behind understanding and making sure all these initiatives, these innovations, going to come fast forward for investment opportunities, as well as for the opportunity for this technology to get embedded in these corporations. This is not even an option anymore. It is because the consumers will make their choices on the products that they buy. And in fact, they go to supermarket and they see if the product or this package is reusable. Is it going to be basically dumped in the ocean, or is it going to go to the landfill? So it is going to basically, the consumer is going to make their decision based on their wallet and how they buy products, if the products are sustainable, if the circular economy is going to take place quicker with some companies to reuse these products, to come and recycle everything. And so this is initiatives that is occurring faster in some industry like food industries, that are happening also occurring in all the other industries as well, in the automotive industries, as well as in a kind of industries such as health even industries. So is this initiative, we see that is a norm for the future. And some countries right now are taking a lead in these initiatives and mandating that by the 2025, by 70% of the product has to be basically recyclable. And Singapore, for example, a small country, obviously leading in that initiative in all their activities. And of course, China have major initiative to do a carbon reductions for both in mining, in energy productions and so forth, and car and automotives. So we see this going to be transforming across the continents to multiple other countries sooner and later.
Thank you for that. Christian, I want to ask you, as a, clean tech, energy, digitalization, all of that is coming together. Sustainability and digitalization, as Sean described it from one industry, are these targets becoming more aligned in your industry and what you're seeing within in urban planning and business and so forth?
Well, I think there's a good way to go for the IT industry if you look at that, because if you look at the impact of IT and IT infrastructure, data centers like that, there are the two big concerns. Concern number one is the energy usage and the amount of energy all the IT equipment needs, and the other one is, as in any other industry, the CO2 emission, obviously. And what it is, the technology development in the IT industry is pushed heavily towards equipment you can reuse, and also equipment which is much better in terms of the efficiency, the energy usage, and even using, in our case, the waste heat of data centers for heating buildings and stuff like that. Because if you look at, my good example is Frankfurt, because I'm just living on the outskirts of that large city. And Frankfurt is not the biggest city in the world. It's about 800,000 people living there. And today, more than 30% of the energy use in Frankfurt goes to data centers, because it's one of the data centers capitals in the world. And most of these data centers were built over the last 10, 15 years with high CO2 emissions, because it's all based on air condition. And for those familiar with the industry, more than 50% of the energy used by a data center goes into the air condition. And that's why a lot of new concepts now are looked at. And one of the concepts is obviously cooling the servers with liquids. It can be water, like in our case with our products. It can be other liquids, and then reusing the heat coming out of it with just feeding it into the heating of buildings or district heatings. And that's trends which in our industry typically are pushed in the Nordic countries, so Sweden, Stockholm is at the forefront of that concept with 30 data centers feeding the hot water into the district heating. But this will more and more come, and it will also get some government regulations. If you want to build a new data center, it has to have some waste heat reuse, or you're not going to be allowed to build it. And that's why this is a lot more driving towards sustainability than it ever was before.
Do you see that it's becoming a little bit, as you said earlier, 10 and 15 years ago, these data centers were being built as they were all over Europe. Are you seeing that most of these European countries or cities are able to easily transform, or are there challenges because of the different municipalities and rules and all of that? Do you see that it's moving a little bit further and faster? Or
I think
go ahead, please.
We see this moving faster, really, because I'm not too familiar with what's going on in Vienna, Dominic, but looking at Frankfurt, there's now a lot of things discussed, which is typically called a Quartierslösung, where you build, the city is building new living areas, and when they plan it and structure it, there are small data center spots already planned with it, with first of all, the idea in mind to provide the necessary infrastructure for all the apps and everything we use every single day. And on the other hand, also heating and provide district heating or heating of parts of the city with new technologies, and going away from all the fossil fuels and all the fossil energy. So this is definitely going faster than ever before.
Thank you. Dominic, what areas of innovation would you identify that need to be revolutionized with the city of Vienna within the upcoming 5 years? And maybe you can answer back a little bit to Christian's remarks as where the city of Vienna is as with the other with Frankfurt.
Well, I just can agree with Christian. I mean, we do face the same problems as Frankfurt, not same, but similar problems. And I would agree that in the last 5 years, I do really see a boost in this context of administration. But administration and governance, it's not just bad, because sometimes all this structure we have in all these old cities, it gives us resilience, and sometimes it's necessary. But of course, the world is changing and time is changing and pace is getting higher. So all these kind of governance structures, they has to be resynced, and that's what's happening. And the COVID, for example, is a boost as well in these administration processes. And when it comes to this urban infrastructure in innovation areas, I mean, many areas got outlined in the last 2 minutes. I mean, I would agree this entire area of heating, of cooling, of the building sector, renewable energies. I mean, this is, of course, this is in the center because, like kind of digital innovation and sustainability will probably become best friends. They have to, because there is European Union law we have to fulfill. There is CO2 emission laws we have to reduce our CO2 emission. It's not a question if we will. If we do not do that, we have to pay many millions euros to Brussels every year. So it's not if we will, it's just happening. So we have to force this innovation. But I think additionally, you asked me on a macro level, I think macro and micro level somehow actually it's getting unsharp, What I see recently, it's just during the context of COVID, I see a lot of innovations going on in the education digital area. In all our schools, we have in Vienna 280,000 pupils at home. We make homeschooling with augmented reality, virtual reality. So there's a huge boost in this area of innovation. I do, of course, see kind of this merge of IoT and urban infrastructure in conjunction with artificial intelligence based on urban data and analytics. So I really do see, of course, IoT and infrastructure. This is not nothing new, but to boost that with AI, this is actually what's happening at the moment. And if you ask me in 5 years, I think we will have a totally different city, and I think this is something very important. Again, probably my last input is what I see as well, this entire area of security issues, privacy issues, of resilient issues. As a city, sometimes, we are afraid. We get up in the morning and we are afraid of everything, But we do see when everything is becoming digital, we do see as well that our citizens are afraid of their data and of their privacy questions. And I do see a lot of movements in these areas. Blockchain, blockchain, not in the context of currency, but in the context of data, of ID, of resilience, and I think this is a very, very main and hot topic in the next years.
Totally agree. Peter, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, if you can give us a little bit of a hint on some of the exciting things that you're looking at and how you see in the upcoming, what type of investments or technologies that you're going to be taking a look at that are going to be in your pre-planning for the next 5 years and moving forward in urban environment?
Sure. Maybe one good news for Dominic, the areas he mentioned, for those areas, there already exist very mature startups, very mature products and services. It's not a garage ideas. It's been proven in many years in many applications. So that's a good news. We are already a couple of years after these things really started. For instance, cloud and heat is one of the examples, right? But when it comes to electrification of transportation, we have companies like Vulog, for instance, who are able to help to optimize kind of the overall car sharing infrastructure and enabling electric vehicles to actually be in the money and be used by people. And there are many others when it comes to charging infrastructure and managing the charging, etc. And the privacy is a topic. There are companies like CyberX and others who are taking care of cybersecurity. So the good news is we have everything already is in place. It's actually very mature. So what we need to find out the way to implement it together, right? To put it on the ground, let it work for cities. Well, another good news is that the if you look at the volume of money invested in impact type of opportunities is estimated 5 billion euro in Europe this year. It was 6 billion in 2019, so small dip, but it's COVID times. But it's up from 3 billion in 2018 or 1 billion in 2015. So lots of money is allocated into impact type of investments who are targeting the cities and efficiencies, etc. And we are looking at many things, and as digitalization goes everywhere and software integrates with hardware, another great example of where we are investing is, for instance, this Forto, which is the Berlin-based company, which is actually digitalizing or creating the backbone of global industry, global trade, making it easy for us, commercial customers or end users to move products from Asia to Germany or Vienna as simple and as reliable as sending an email. So these are the areas, where we wouldn't thought of this could be digitalized and where CO2 footprint could be significantly lowered and costs significantly lowered. So that would be more or less my answer. But lots of good news. We just need to implement that.
Well, I also think it's really important, Peter, that you come to Vienna when you can and meet with Dominic so you can share the ideas, because I know how great and how passionate you are about all of that. Sean, just a quick question, because Dominic touched on it. Is the post-pandemic's new normal in doing business with Zoom, how the kids are studying, shifting the customer engagement, not just only for the young people, but, for everybody? And how is that going to change the landscape for industries, education, and so on? How do you see that?
I think this transformation is really what it has occurred in the past 9 months, how we're able to really communicate so quickly and so engage through our cross-border, cross-industries, without going through the travels of being jet lagged and of course planning about 2 weeks ahead, all the meetings. It just fast tracks the productivity. And of course, certain industries will never go back to what it was. And travel and airlines have to face the reality that maybe about 35% of their business will never come back, simply because now this online phenomenon has shifted the productivity of all of these industries tremendously. And so if you have a huge sales force that they need to get trained and they have to go through certain kind of other regional locations, they can do it all on Zoom, and they can save tons of money on travel expenses. So these kind of things is basically going to be impacted tremendously. Obviously, on the business development side, things with some customers have to constantly be met. That still may go on, but also remote, touchless into industrial segment, it's completely can be transformed through the virtual and digital way of doing business. Training processes, educations. I just don't have to tell you that the universities are being transformed completely, and that's a very disruption is occurring. And so many of these industries now, they're seeing the opportunities to save tremendous amount of money, but not in fact scale their business through this virtual engagement. So that means deploying all the techs that is out there through the great innovations that basically startups are coming to solve these problems, but it's just diminishing the business as usual for many of those other industries that has been doing this for years and thought it's going to continue. So I would say that it's a bad news for some industry, but it's a great news and opportunity for a tremendous number of industry to really reevaluate how they can do business more effectively through these digital transformations.
So you use the word revalue. Some people are talking about refocusing, readjusting, and most importantly is trying to get a better picture of what the new normal will be and how the urban environments, smart city technologies are going to come seamlessly, hopefully seamlessly together, not only with the investors, but actually with the portfolio companies that are going to be bringing technologies. And as you mentioned earlier, the industries and with these digitalization processes, whether it's Zoom and so forth, of course, having the personal contact is much more important. And of course, it's valuable to have that. But in the interim, would you say that as Peter mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of stuff still going on even remotely? We heard from T.B. Schenker earlier this morning that he was traveling 200 days out of the year, going all over the place to take care of his territories, but he's still able to do a lot of work just using the digitalization like we're doing today and touching so many people at different time zones.
Absolutely. I say that basically this is all, I would say in Asia already, the sense is here because that was these are the basically region that everybody did a lot of face-to-face. And now they're seeing a tremendous amount of productivity through the platformizations of a lot of these applications that they are being developed. Whether it's, of course, the meeting is one thing, but also the industries that basically deploying this new mobility segment of sensors and biometrics that can trace the patients, for example, without coming to the hospital. Things that can both more or less has been basically doctors and all of these professionals can monitor remotely, can impact those industry tremendously and save costs, and of course create a lot more opportunities for technology to really take place and foothold for the future. And during the demises of a lot of these financial crises that occurred in 2008, a lot of great companies came about and revolutionized the industries like hotel business and a car business. And those small companies like Airbnb and Uber definitely changed the whole directions of those industries. And we're seeing the same thing is occurring now during the pandemic, that a whole new ideas are coming up on the mobility sides and of course on the industrial side, on the real estate side of things even.
Thank you.
sure.
So we're going to go quickly to a wrap-up question. Dominic, if you could look into a crystal ball, where do you see Q3 2021, short term, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, and 25 years from now? The reason why I mention is this morning we had a really interesting visualization from Daimler and from their innovation, and it was incredible how they see a city. But since you're on the ground and you're actually planning and working on this innovation within the city, look into your magic crystal ball and give us a little bit of insights for us investors know where to start putting our money in and making everybody's life easier.
Well, it's not 5 years from now on. I think really working on the ground, I love it to be in this bubble as we are today, you know. But I know that the real world is not a fancy startup bubble, you know. We have, I'll give you one example, you know, we have almost 40% of all our companies in the city of Vienna are at the edge right now, you know. They really fight to survive. And it's billions of billions we have to invest to kind of keep them alive. So I do see the future bright, but the question is, it's more 15 years than 5 years. You know, it's a long way to go. And I think this entire innovation, digitalization world, a certain amount of companies and people will benefit from it. But to get the entire city and the entire people, and I am responsible for 2 million people, not just for these 100,000 32-year-old white guys who have a study in informatics, you know. I'm responsible for almost 600,000 people who are older than 60 years old. And in order to get all this world, all the entire city and on a higher level, I think it's more 15 years than 5.
Well, you're also responsible for me because I live in your beautiful city, but I'm happy I'm not in the last piece. I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way. Thank you for that insight. Peter, what's your vision for 5 years and 15 years, how you see the urban city develop?
Look, you know, it's a $1 billion question, right? But I think there's lots of good stuff today already available, which could be implemented, which could make the lives in the cities for people, all people, including the old ones, much better. As the technology evolves, the sensors got cheaper, the software got much smarter. We can really help people to have decent lives, breathe good air in the cities, drive within the shared economies, and not really spend too much energy on things which pollute our cities, etc. So, you know, it can be, and if you look at the new generation of people like my kids, and you know, they want this change actually. And they will make sure that they will vote for politicians who will have this at the heart of their topic. So I see only positive. And by the way, when it comes to the quality of our lives as investors and these conferences, I think, look, you know, maybe with Dominic, we will be lots of time online, right? And we will strike deals online. But when I come to Vienna, I will party with Dominic. I will actually spend physical time having fun rather than reading contracts. So that's another positive of COVID and digitalization. Lots of stuff will be done online from our homes, home offices, etc. But when we meet, it will be actually high quality time. We're going to be really lots of fun, and we will be celebrating the deals we did together online.
And that's for sure. I can assure you that he will come, Dominic, so get ready. Christian, as you're on the ground working in Frankfurt with a lot of, let's say, modernizing these big data centers to become more compliant and helping them transition to becoming state of the art and doing smart investment with smart technology like your company, where do you see the company going in 5 years or 10 years or the future, and with your people that you're working with?
Well, I think first of all, I'm gonna kind of agree what Peter and Dominic said. I still would like to meet people in 5, 10, and 15 years, and that's the key. So I think we're all looking forward to that pandemic and to be going away at some point. But looking at smart cities, digitalization, sustainability, I think what we call circular economy in the IT industry is going to become so much more important than it ever was before, because we all know in the past, for companies, they bought a IT gear, they bought a server. 18 months later, they need the new one, right? And this is changing dramatically in the IT industry right now. And at the forefront is one of the big ones, obviously, Facebook and their Open Compute project. So Facebook, basically every year, a few 100,000 server go in end of life. But there's a new industry building now, taking these servers, refurbishing them. We work with some of them to add cooling kits and make it more efficient and then sell it again, because these products are still very good and can be used for a lot of applications. So, and I think this will also come to our more private use of IT and digitalization equipment. Just take everybody's laptop, right? It's like 2-3 years, then everybody feels, well, why not getting a new one? So I'm not sure if this is ever possible from a technology point of view, but it could be that in 10 years, instead of buying a new notebook, you just open a little side of your notebook, put a new CPU in, and here you go and got the newest and best equipment, rather than throwing everything away with the screen and all the other electronic pieces. So I think a circular economy with a lot more sustainable features will be the future of the IT industry.
Well, I think it's definitely clear that you're going to have some further, deeper conversations with Sean, who was sharing with us what he's doing. And Sean, what would you, touching on what Christian just said, how do you see 5 years, 15 years, and how do you see the course of development, and as what the other gentlemen have touched on?
Yes, I think that I agree with everybody here in the panel that all of those initiatives and all those information that you just shared is going to be the most important and relevant. However, environment and consumers and customers and people are the driving force behind all of this change. I would say that there are companies who have to completely revamp their whole idea of making products from completely scrapping old way of doing business. Then there's a transitional way to get there. So what I would say that basically the clean air in the smart cities, the clean water, all the infrastructure is going to have to be revamped eventually, as 2.5 billion people are going to be moving to the cities and urbanizations. So the current cities in many of these part of the world are not set up for that kind of support. So this brings a lot of opportunities, but it also brings a lot of challenges. So I would say that without the help of the governments, without the help of the investors, without the help of the corporate entities together, none of these things can be achieved. I mean that bringing everybody together to solve this problem, and that is a mindset that has to be completely shifted. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking that this is going to be taking place gradually, but individually industries, they will shift and digitalize faster, but the regulations plays a big role in all of this. And hopefully government will be on board too.
Well, I hope that there'll be definitely an opportunity. I will tell you there are direct flights, Ava Air from Bangkok to Vienna, and all of us can meet together, and I'll host a taco dinner, and I'm sure Peter will can bring the great wine, and we'll sit down with Dominic and have a meeting of the minds, and maybe we can solve some of the world's problems, if not quickly, but sooner. It has been a fantastic opportunity to be with all of you this afternoon, this morning, and this evening where everyone has been plugging in. I am so proud and privileged to have been a part of this panel and also to be moderating it. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. And thank you for your kind attention. And the exciting part is coming. I see Katinka. Here she comes.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Linda,
Yes.
so much for moderating this fantastic panel. Many extremely insightful learnings and visions for the upcoming year, optimistic, but it is also a challenge. We know that. But what is more challenging than 2020? I think
We're almost over.
nothing.
We're almost over. And by the way, everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Big kiss and big hug to all of you. And I'm looking
Thank you,
forward to
guys. Take
welcoming
good
you.
care. Looking forward to seeing you guys in person soon.
Yes, us too. Ciao. Bye-bye.